man, just spent the whole weekend pretty much working on the house. I just have to say thank God for YouTube. How did the generations before us get anything done around the house before YouTube? you know? Things like I changed the fill valve on our toilets. Without watching YouTube videos, I would have had no idea. Would have just taken me a month to do it. Let's hear it for YouTube. Hey everyone, I'm Patrick Jones, and welcome to That Gives Me Anxiety, episode 34. So yeah, happy 4th of July. Just passed. I hope it was good for you. Like I said, I did a bunch of things around the house. We did. Jamie and I installed a dishwasher. Oof, that's a little bit trickier than I thought. Laid down some mulch in the flower beds. You don't need YouTube for mulch. Mulch is instinctive. You just feel where the mulch has to go and how much mulch you need. And apparently I need to work on that because I didn't get a quarter of the amount that I need. But yeah, good 3-day weekend. Got a lot of stuff done and get us a bit more settled in the house. Plus, Jamie made this like watermelon cocktail. Just blended it up. Some rosé in it. Ooh, that didn't suck. Well, I've got a great episode lined up. It's the full interview on aliens with Dr. Tim Paglione, who's a professor of physics and astronomy at CUNY York College in New York. Parts of the interview have already featured on a previous episode, but it's just so fun to go all the way in depth that we went in the conversation about whether or not we'd want to be contacted by aliens. We being Earth. Because who knows what aliens would want? Would they want to be nice and show us how to travel around the galaxy, or would they just want to blow us up? So that's part of the debate we had. But before we get to aliens, let's talk about, if you're liking the show, please remember to rate and review it. Check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Or YouTube. Huge YouTube fan. Even more so now. And if you're liking the show and you want to support it and support me, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link wherever you're listening. And through that, you can make a small donation. Any donation you really want. And that helps me make the shows. So yeah, that would be very much appreciated. Well, all right, let's make our way over to the interview with Dr. Paglione. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy. Joining me now on the podcast is Tim Paglione, who is a professor of physics and astronomy at CUNY New York, or CUNY York College. Tim, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's a real thrill. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you have a few more things going on. So why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I chair the Department of Earth and Physical Sciences at York College. I'm also a research associate at the American Museum of Natural History. So that's, I'm the only astronomer at York. But throughout CUNY, there's 15 research astronomers. We're on 9 campuses in all 5 boroughs, and I head that collaboration as well. We call ourselves CUNY Astro. It's based at the American Museum of Natural History and also at the Flatiron Institute Center for Computational Astrophysics. So we really have a large group. If we were in one place, we'd be a department, a pretty big department. But since we're spread out, we have this coalition that I'm real proud of. We just launched a master's program at the CUNY Grad Center. Really excited about that. We're actively recruiting for our first class. And for the last 10 years, probably the thing I'm most proud of, I've been running a project called AstroCom NYC, which is a undergraduate mentoring program. We get students from CUNY engaged in research and moving on into careers in grad school and things like that. So it's awesome. All an effort to improve the diversity in our field and build that community, the COM and AstroCom NYC as community.
I love that. That's
very,
so exciting.
Very proud of our students in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what sorts of things do you study at the American Museum of Natural History?
Well, for the last decade or so, I've been mostly working at the very, very highest energies. I'm an observer, and I study gamma rays primarily. So these are the highest energy light. Gamma rays don't penetrate the atmosphere. They interact readily with the atoms and molecules in the atmosphere. So you have to use satellites for it. And there's the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. It's been in orbit for 13 years now. I've been using those data to study, the most energetic processes in the universe. So primarily super high-speed energetic particles known as cosmic rays. They interact with clouds, interstellar clouds, that make them glow in gamma rays, or explosions, the glowing gamma rays, super energetic pulsars, which are these rapidly rotating, highly magnetic neutron stars, the glowing gamma rays, you name it. If it's at the extreme, it can generate gamma rays, and that's what I'm most interested in.
Awesome. That's so cool. It's also funny that you can add that descriptive term of like, I'm on the extreme end. It's just like extreme research.
Got to really force my students. They're very humble when they give a presentation about the work that they're doing. And I'm like, you cannot exaggerate enough. This is the extreme. This is the most energetic, the densest, the craziest. I mean, you can't go too far. It's the edge. Eventually they get there. They feel a little timid about it. It's funny.
Sure. Yeah, that's so fun though. Well, the main point of our discussion today is whether or not we would want to be contacted by aliens and sort of how we're making our presence felt in the universe. So I wonder if you have any initial thoughts on the subject before we dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be pretty excited about SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence and things like that. I thought it's a good idea to be searching and things like that. But what would happen if we heard something, right? If we got a message, that's a really interesting sociological problem. That's beyond my pay grade for sure.
Yeah.
But the science is pretty clear that we should expect that there are civilizations out there that we should be hearing from. And this is why we've been attempting to search. And then I read a book last summer, which kind of changed my mind. But really, there's a flip side to this. We're sort of passively broadcasting, and we're also just there. There's some elements of our presence that we can't hide besides our broadcasting. And so the notion is that civilizations should know that we're here too. And if they don't, should we broadcast? Is the big thing. Should we? There's another side to SETI. There's METI, the messaging extraterrestrial intelligence. And that's the big controversy at this point is should we send out a message and really purposefully make ourselves known? And after reading Lucy Zin's Three-Body Problem trilogy, I really changed my mind. It's much scarier now. It actually gives me anxiety. Oh,
geez.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons. It seems to me I'm on the side that there's a lot of reasons to be super duper careful. The sort of Star Trek vision of the Federation that's out there, and it's all very altruistic. That's not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And so, do we play it safe? Do we trust in the benevolence of the universe? I don't know.
Yeah, it really depends on so many different factors, right? But even looking to our own history and Earth's history, when people would, I'm using air quotes, discover other parts of the world, it usually didn't spell a positive thing for the people that were already there. So that could be something that happens on a planetary scale.
Yeah, this is the way that Lucy Zin has it translated afterward in author's note after the first book in the Three-Body Problem, which is called The Three-Body Problem. There's actually 3 books, highly recommended, by the way. Three-Body Problem won a Hugo Award once it was translated into English, so it's a really tremendous series. And he said he cited exactly that history just on the Earth. Anytime people went to another continent, it was destructive to all parties generally. And why we would suddenly look at the stars and feel sentimental about it is a mystery. It's just naive. But there's people that argue in the opposite direction too, especially the METI people are very, very passionate and have a lot of great philosophical arguments in the other direction as well. It's been interesting looking at all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely going to check out this series of books that you're mentioning, the Three-Body Problem. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. In today's day and age, you're supposed to be drinking a ton of water, doing yoga, making sure you and your whole family is happy, strike a good work-life balance, exercise, read books, watch movies, eat healthy meals, be a big part of your community, and get 8 hours of sleep. It's unrealistic. It's too much. Well, that's why there's Instacart to take a little bit off your plate, or help put a little bit on your plate. Oh, I'm so sorry. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and items that you need from the grocery store, fresh produce, all your favorites, everything you want, and they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do your shopping for you. Just remove it from your to-do list. just with a few clicks. And you'll have your items delivered to your door in as fast as an hour. It's pretty quick. And through the link in the episode description, they're offering free delivery on your first order over $35. But you got to make sure you click the link in the description. That tells Instacart that this show sent you and it helps support the show. And you can also take advantage of the free delivery. So yeah, be nice to yourself. Give Instacart a shot.
Well, you already hinted at it a little bit. How do we know that the likelihood is so good that there are other civilizations? I've heard of the Drake equation, but I'm not exactly sure how that breaks down. So maybe that might be something that you can help me out with.
Yeah, exactly. And I run through this in with my classes too, especially the solar system class. The last thing that we do is this activity on the Drake equation. So it's this long string of probabilities, of fractions, and mostly, for the most part. And the ultimate end goal is to find the number of civilizations we can communicate in the galaxy with. And so that's a big N. That's that total number. And it depends on a whole bunch of factors. And when I do this in class, I just break it down to like a half a dozen or so factors to keep it kind of concise. Some of these factors we know really well. Some of these factors are absolute wild conjecture, but we can run through them. We could run through them just like I run through it with my class. And everybody, and I've done it now with thousands of students, and everybody comes up with their final answer for the number of communicative civilizations that are out there. So you want to do that? You want to
Let's do it.
out?
I just got very excited. So yes.
So the first number here that we need to look at is the rate at which suitable stars form in the galaxy. So these are stars that aren't too cold, so that they could support life on a nearby planet, and not too hot either, so that they would just destroy life on a planet. And it turns out that the really hot stars also tend to live short lives. So if you get one of these very hot and luminous stars that would be really baking any nearby planet, they don't live for very long, maybe a few million years, not billions of years, maybe 100 million years. But even then, we needed like a billion years to have life get going here. So any of these massive and hot stars are no good. So what you want is something cooler, like the sun. And the most likely type of star, the most common type of star in the galaxy, is very, very cool. And it's around those stars that we've discovered a lot of planets, because they're just so plentiful. So the rate at which suitable stars form in the galaxy, this is almost not something for us to play with, because this is a well-known number. Stars like the sun in our galaxy are formed about one per year.
Oh, wow.
So you could put a number in right now into the Drake equation, about one, for that. And so this is easy for us to start with, one, and we know there's one civilization we can communicate with, which is ours.
Yeah.
So this is really, the big N is really other civilizations. So that one, you could put in whatever number you want, 2, 10, a tenth, one every 10 years. But we know this number pretty well. It's about one. The next number in the Drake equation, the next factor, is the fraction of those stars that have planets. This used to be wild conjecture. Again, we thought, well, planets should be common, but until the 90s, we didn't know about any planets around any other stars. None. And in 1995, there was a planet discovered around a star called 51 Peg, and that was the first one. And then that opened up a floodgate of planetary discoveries. And now we've discovered thousands of planets orbiting other stars. So these extrasolar planets, or exoplanets, or extrasolar systems, there's just jillions of them out there. And there was a space mission called Kepler that really changed the game here. And what Kepler looks for is the planet going in front of its own star. So from our point of view, it takes a really special alignment, but it's like a little eclipse. And it's not much, because planets are small compared to their stars, compared to stars like the Earth's 100 times smaller than the sun. But there'll be a little dip in brightness of the star when you're looking at it. And then that little dip will happen periodically every time the planet goes around. So for every one of the planet's years, there'd be a little dip in the brightness, so we can tell how big the planet is and how often it goes around. So this should be a fraction. It should be some number between 0 and 1. But the thing is, nowadays, we've discovered so many planets, they seem really, really common. So it's something like half the stars in the galaxy probably have planets. And so think about what number you would put in there. Some people think this is pretty high. Maybe 90% of stars have planets.
Yeah, let's go really conservative. Let's say 30%.
Okay, so put in a 0.3. Yeah, that's cool. So the next thing, now we have planets, right? So we've dropped the fraction down. How many of these planets can support life? That's the next question. Because if all the planets are really close to the star, they're just baked. They're like Mercury. You can't live on Mercury. No atmosphere, you're toast. If they're all very far away, they're frozen. And especially around a small, cool star, which again is the most common type, you can't be too far away or they're just frozen solid. Because really the trick to life, as we know it, is you need liquid water. Can't be ice. All the chemical reactions will be too slow, and it can't be steam because then all the chemical reactions would just be really super unlikely. You don't have good molecules bumping into each other to form complex molecules and stuff and life. So what we need is liquid water. So the Earth is great. It's not too close to the sun that all the water is boiled, and it's not too far from the sun that all the water is frozen, like we see on some of the moons of Jupiter and stuff like that. The water seems to be completely frozen. So this is sometimes referred to as the Goldilocks zone because it's not too hot, not too cold. We call it the habitable zone. We can make a decent guess at this number, this fraction, or this is a number again. This is the number of planets that could support life. And so you can make a decent guess looking at the solar system, right? Because we have one planet that definitely supports life, has liquid water. But if you look around a little more generously, there could be liquid water on or under the surface of Mars. That's a possibility. There's been a lot of really tantalizing clues to that. Or there was definitely liquid water on Mars at some time. It could have supported life then. We don't know. We haven't found that yet. And then there seems to be huge reservoirs of liquid water under the solid icy surfaces of some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. So could that support life? We don't know. But, you know, one for sure, maybe two or four or more. So think of a number. How many of these planets could support life? 1, 2, 3.
Let's go 2. I like to keep it on the low end because I'm curious to see, even if we're like slanted a bit negative, how this turns out.
That's right. So now we start to get a little more speculative. Of these planets that could support life, that have liquid water. So this has all been physics up to this point. Now we start to get into far more complex problems, which is biology. How many of those, what fraction of those will support life? So you have a number, right? Number of planets. We chose 2 for this example. So is it 0 out of 2? Is it 1 out of 2? Is it 2 out of 2?
Well, it has to be 1 because, or does it have to be 1? I'm choosing 1 because we know that there's life here.
Right. So it could be 1 out of 2, but it could be whatever fraction you want. You could say maybe we don't just have to use 1 out of 2. We don't have to use integers here. It can be, you could just come up with a new fraction here, like a tenth. Maybe you think life, even though the conditions might be right, life is fairly rare, or it seems less likely. So you can make it a tenth or 100th. Or some people think once the conditions are good, life's inevitable. And so it'd be almost 100%.
The Jeff Goldblum approach from Jurassic Park. Life it crashes through boundaries and finds a way. Well, let's make it a 10th then, just to go with the continued approach of pessimism. Yes.
Sure. All right. Well, after this, we really, really start to guess what fraction of these planets with life give rise to intelligent life. Again, this is some fraction, and normally people are at the edges of the spectrum here. It's either close to 0 or close to 1. Either life is intelligence is super rare, or intelligence, again, is inevitable. And so you could hedge your bets and say a half or something like that. But I'll tell you from my experience working with thousands of students over the years doing this survey, it's either close to 0 or close to 1.
I would say close to 0 because I would imagine most life is towards a single cell organism range, if I had to guess. So yeah, closer to 0 for intelligence.
Interesting. Okay, that's an interesting rationale that I haven't heard people apply before. Usually people have a gut reaction, just an intuition to this. Some students are really adamant. No, intelligence, that's like us. And it's our special gift, whatever. So it's 0. And once you put a 0 in this, because we're multiplying all these probabilities. Once you put a zero in, you get zero. Zero civilizations out there. So you got to be careful with zero. So what do you say, a tenth?
Yeah, let's say a tenth.
Okay. Then what fraction of these intelligent groups will develop technology that we can communicate with? This is pretty interesting. We have what other people might consider intelligent life on the earth already besides us, right? Dolphins, dogs, octopus, right? People just said recently they're intelligent.
I saw that my octopus teacher. Yeah. It changed my perspective on their intelligence level for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really intelligent, but they don't build radios. So
Right.
we can't communicate with them over interstellar distances. And frankly, there's plenty of people that don't use that technology either. And they're totally thriving and happy, and it's all great. You know, there's small villages throughout the world where people just don't need that stuff. And they're people, right? They're totally intelligent. So
yeah, that's an incredible distinction to draw, that like there may be, I mean, just like there are groups of people that have no interest in certain technologies, that there could be civilizations that are just perfectly happy. And I kind of wish that to be the case, because that means they've created like a Garden of Eden for themselves, that they're just like, yeah, we're good. We don't have problems here as much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you land, if an alien landed in the Islamic world in 1000 AD, they would have seen a thriving civilization with universities and great inventions and things like that, but they did not communicate off the world. And Renaissance Europe, amazing stuff going on. Lots of great constructions, no communications off world.
Right.
It's a 20th century thing. So what do you think? Technology likely? And again, some people think this is inevitable, right? Because it happened here, regardless of the thriving civilizations that happened throughout history. Inevitably, because of war and conflict and the importance of technology, it just continues to grow. And Xi Jinping has said that it's an important part of the principles that drove the scary story there, that there's a technological explosion, in fact, that it's rather instantaneous. Humans have been around for a couple 100,000 years, and then all of a sudden, we get car planes and radio communication, stuff like that, nuclear warheads. It's pretty dramatic.
That's true. From like World War II to now, we've gone from like inventing the radio to Elon Musk looking to put people on Mars. I mean, that's a blip in our human history.
And if there's a neighboring civilization that did all that just 1,000 years before us or 200 years before us, they're leagues ahead of us. Right?
Yeah. So. Oh, wow. So then let's, again, going with pessimism, let's say a quarter of them develop technology that communicates off planet.
Okay. Now, how long would you expect our civilization or a civilization like this to last? This is probably the scariest or the creepiest of the numbers. So this is a year. You would measure it in years. So there's a few ways you can measure this, but we've been communicative in this way for about 100 years. So it should at least be about 100. Perhaps some technology will replace what we use, so that makes this number a little shorter. Perhaps we'll blow ourselves to smithereens. Who knows? This is a number that at least has a lower limit. It's got to be something like 100.
500 years?
How long do you think?
Just because
500 years for radio communication. 80? 100. Yeah.
Okay. So you say, 80 then.
You're going with the lower limit.
Oh, you say
we're done tomorrow.
I was saying 500 because
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 500. All right. Yeah, my value for this has varied over the years. I tend to go with something like 1,000 or 10,000 or I don't know. But yeah, it's centuries. Seems like maybe we'll replace it with something else. If we went 100% fiber, we'd be doing great, and yet we'd be silent to the rest of the universe. So that'd be interesting. All right, so all we got to do is multiply all these numbers together, and then we'll get a final value for everything. So we got 0.3 times 2, 0.6, 0.06, 0.006, and a quarter. I'm going to call that 0.001 times 500. So you're very pessimistic. We're something like you're saying there's something like maybe none to one other civilization out there. So very low numbers here. Yeah, let me just double check my math again. 5, 10, yeah, 0.3 over 4. Yeah, so a little less than 1 is what your numbers come out to. And when I do this with students, there's an occasional 0. It's happened over 25 years that there's been, I think, 2 zeros all this time. But usually the numbers come out to around a few hundred.
Oh, wow.
So I'll poll the class and we'll make a little histogram on the board. Yeah, it's usually a few hundred civilizations out there.
Yeah, because I decidedly went pessimistic just to see what would happen, and it still produced another civilization. And is that just this galaxy and not factoring in other galaxies?
That's just the galaxy. Yep, just our
wow.
galaxy. Yeah, just one galaxy.
So if you were going to get like hundreds in, let's say, the Milky Way, that if you expand that out to other galaxies, that would mean that there would be an infinite amount.
Billions.
Yeah,
a lot.
Oh my gosh.
But communication within the galaxy is hard enough. Between galaxies, it's effectively impossible. So communication with our technology. So that's the real key. You know, even if you get 100 civilizations like ours that are out there right now that we can talk to, even if it was something like 100 or 1,000, they're spread out through the galaxy, which is pretty darn vast. And so the closest one to us might be, if you crank out the numbers, the closest one to us might be 1,000 light years away. And so it takes 1,000 years at the speed of light for our signal to reach them. And then it would take it. So there's the hello, right? And then if they respond, how you doing? That's another 1,000 years to reach us back.
Oh my gosh.
That is a super slow and pointless conversation.
Yeah.
Not even a conversation. And so the whole idea of, if they're out there, and there's a lot of reasons to think just sort of mathematically they should be out there, your Drake equation result notwithstanding, then where the heck are they? You know, why haven't we had these conversations yet? And it could just simply be the vast distances that make it so hard.
Yeah. Look who we got here. It's our friends at My Software Tutor. Can Excel be my friend? Many people have wondered this for years. The answer is yes, it can. Excel doesn't have to be like the friend that your mom makes you hang out with in elementary school. It's weird. It's always stuff with boogers, right? What's wrong? What's up? Why is that kid always eating boogers? Their house always had the best snacks too. And there he is. Boogers. Well, Excel doesn't have to be like that weird kid. Unless you were that weird kid. Were you? Be honest. You know. I'm not actually asking. I can't hear your response, but you know. And it's okay if you were. You know, just take it easy with the boogers. Just talking about boogers to get ad read. Don't worry. They didn't write that part. That was an improvisation. My Software Tutor offers 3 levels of real-time Zoom-based courses with a live instructor. They deliver practical, functional business skills in a friendly and supportive environment. It can be daunting, right? You need that supporting environment to learn Excel. There's no stupid questions. It could be really difficult. And as we know, when we talk about it on this podcast all the time, it could be really daunting to learn something new and put yourself out there. So think of this as like a kindergarten for learning something new and helping your job prospects. Or be better at the job you already have. Get that raise, get that whatever, take pictures of it for Instagram. Yeah, that'll be cool. Keeping it as vague as possible so that you can input your own. Just making a mad lib of your own desires. These courses will increase your marketability, whether you're an employee, job seeker, consultant, or contractor. Register at mysoftwaretutor.com and use the promo code POD20 to save 20% off all registrations. Thank you so much to My Software Tutor. Yeah, guys, take advantage of that 20% off and confidently list Excel on your resume. Well, what are some of the ways that the Earth is broadcasting out there? How does it work that radio broadcasts actually make it out into space?
Oh, how does it work? I mean, as long as it can get beyond our upper atmosphere, which is actually the higher up you get in the atmosphere, the molecules that you're breathing right now, they are more and more exposed to the high energy sunlight, ultraviolet and X-rays, which breaks apart the molecules into atoms. And then it can further break apart those atoms into ions. If you pull an electron off the atom, now it's charged. It's an ion, and the electron is a free electron, which also has a charge. So you end up with the atmosphere going from being neutral, which is what we're breathing right now, to being charged. Positive and electric charges. So overall, there's no net charge because you have equal number of positive and negative. But that whole thing's called a plasma, when it's a charged medium like that. And that can interact with electric and magnetic fields. And so our communication, which is electromagnetic radiation, that's what light is, especially at low frequencies like AM frequencies and things like that, that interacts too strongly with our ionosphere, that region of the atmosphere that's ionized, so that those communications can't leave. But at higher frequencies like FM and beyond, those transmissions can leave our ionosphere. They can leave the atmosphere. So that's what we use to communicate with satellites, because otherwise the signal doesn't get there. Ham radio operators use this to great effect because you can, especially at night when the ionosphere gets very, very high, you can bounce those radio signals, and they'll bounce off the surface of the Earth and bounce off the ionosphere, and you can communicate from Chicago to New York or almost around the world. These radio operators take advantage of that. It's really pretty cool.
That's exciting. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize that's how that worked. And
but
then
at the higher frequencies, they can leave. So we've been broadcasting like crazy since like the 30s,
Oh, wow. So that means I've heard that there are episodes of I Love Lucy going out
right.
into the universe, which is a very funny thought.
Yeah. Well, in Contact, the first TV broadcast was the Nazi propaganda videos at the Olympics, and so that's what Carl Sagan used as our lovely first broadcast to the universe. When they first decoded the signal, they saw the swastika, and they were like, "What the heck is this? It's space Nazis!" But it turned out to be a rebroadcast. They were just reflecting back our signal to say, "We heard you." That was just an acknowledgement, which seemed like a logical response from aliens. But yeah, so it just goes. We got no control. Like I said, we've been passively emitting for all that time. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Are there any biological imprints that we're putting on the planet that might be able to be perceived, like it's something that chemically that we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting. What I was telling you before, that we've discovered thousands of these planets through those little transit signals in the slight dimming of the sun. Mm-hmm. You might wonder, can other star systems see us in that way? Can they detect the Earth's transit across the sun? And you absolutely can. A colleague of mine at the American Museum of Natural History, Jackie Faraday, and a colleague of hers, Kaltenegger, they published a paper last year saying, if there's another Kepler mission out there from another solar system, and they were looking back at us, we would be one of those transiting systems that they would discover. And it turns out that there's a couple of dozen systems out there that are just aligned with our solar system just right to see the Earth transit. And if they can see us, they know we're there. So at least, they can start filling in the Drake equation on their planet, saying, well, we see this small rocky body, and it's in the Goldilocks zone of its star, so it could support life. And then the next step would be searching for those signatures in the atmosphere that indicate that there could be life there. Now, this is really hard to do because you have to actually somehow do what's called spectroscopy on the atmosphere of the planet. And so this is taking the light that you would see from the planet and breaking it up into a rainbow, use a prism or something like that, and you break it all up. And so you don't just get a complete rainbow. Like if you look at the sun, the rainbow is broken up with these dark lines, and those lines are telling you what atoms or molecules are in the atmosphere, because every line, it's a fingerprint of the different atoms that you're looking at. And so what you want to look at are some of these things that are telling you that there could be life there. And folks have made templates of what the spectrum of the Earth would look like and what are some of the life signs. And it's things like oxygen. If you leave a bar of iron out in the air, what happens to it after a while?
It'll rust.
It rusts. Yeah. What is rust? It's a chemical reaction. Actually, it's oxidation. of the iron. The iron is combining with the oxygen to make iron oxide, and that's what rust is. Oxygen is very reactive. If all the life on the earth were gone right this instant, the oxygen that's left in the air would start to react with all the rocks and other stuff, and eventually it'd go away.
Oh,
so
wow.
to see oxygen in the atmosphere in considerable quantities is telling you that it's being replenished actively. And we know on the earth that's being done with plants. And so seeing a significant amount of oxygen in the atmosphere is a good indication, or one of the indications, that maybe there's life on the planet, because you kind of tend to have to replenish the oxygen in the atmosphere. And then there's other things people look for, like chloroform, not chloroform, chlorophyll. You look at the chlorophyll signature of plant absorption of sunlight on the surface. And there's other things you can look for too. Methane, some people think methane is a good sign of life and stuff like that. So, but you can see there's all this controversy with the methane that's been discovered on Mars. There seem to be geological ways to do it, and there might be natural ways. Oxygen's kind of the big telltale, but I'm sure there's complications to that too.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I never knew that. That's crazy. I mean, I was asking that question kind of out of the blue, just being like, there's got to be something we're doing, but just the simple fact of oxygen existing, I didn't. It makes perfect sense that it would be that reactive. I mean, just look at the Statue of Liberty, and you could see how it changes a lot of things around us. But that's wow. That blows my mind.
Yeah. But it's just so darn hard to do. You can't, if you, the glare from the star is tremendous. So compared to the planet, which is right next to it, and the distances are so vast, we're so far away from the next nearest star that the entire solar system is like a point. And so, you're trying to discern this extremely faint object next to an extremely bright object. And then you want to spread the light out into all different frequencies and colors and try to figure out if you see an absorption signal. Ooh, it's really, really challenging. People are doing it. Some of my colleagues at CUNY and at the American Museum of Natural History are looking at the atmospheres of planets, brown dwarfs, which are in a lot of ways very similar to planets. Yeah, looking at their clouds, looking at their other spectroscopic properties and things like that. And, it's just that an actual bona fide planet like the Earth is really, really tremendously difficult to look at. But geez, we didn't have a spectrum of even something relatively easy to look at, like a brown dwarf. We didn't have a spectrum of that until relatively recently. And now we have spectra of a whole bunch of them. And we even have spectra of some of these extrasolar planets too in just the last, decade. So again, this is this technological explosion. So if one of these alien civilizations, Kaltenegger and Faraday, say, have already seen the Earth transit in a very short amount of time, basically instantaneously, they'll be able to tell what's in our atmosphere and pretty much say, this is probably a planet with life on it.
Let's go crash that party. Yeah.
Listen, right? You want to listen. You want to really aim your SETI instruments at the planet to listen.
Yeah. Hey, do you wish you were a thoughtful card person but don't have the time or energy? Right? You want to be that person that has a hobby, full-time job, crushing it in the job, has kids, has a family, has a dog, whatever it is, and still, right, sends that message, sends a card, handwritten, something that makes you laugh and cry. How does that person do it? I don't know. But maybe it's Cardist. Maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's Cardist. The Cardist Studio is your personal assistant. That's how you get it done, right? Somebody helps you out with it. That's okay. The end result is still the end result. You're thinking, oh, should I send them a card? That's it. From there, you just jump onto thecardiststudio.com and tell them exactly what just popped in your head. Your thoughtfulness. The Cardist Studio will get your personalized message handwritten into the card and in the mail for you. You're busy. You're doing a lot of other things. It's not like they're going to tell on you. And the person's going to be thrilled. I've gotten one of these and it filled my heart with joy. Even better, it's fast, it's custom, and it's a total life changer. Hey, you're a thoughtful card person now. Look at you. New achievement unlocked. Just go to thecardiststudio.com and you can even use the promo code AnxietyPod for 10% off all orders. Well, that leads me to another question I had. How does SETI go about searching for extraterrestrial life?
It's a radio survey, and the problem is you don't know where to look, over the entire sky, right?
Yeah.
You don't know where to look. So they have to kind of look everywhere or be a little smart about the way that they look, look at nearby systems because that's sort of reasonable, because anything far away, it would be faint, right? Even if you put the starlight from a star that's very far away, it looks faint, right? Because something far away is faint. And the same thing, if it's broadcasting in the radio, that's going to be a very faint signal. So you want to look at something nearby because the chance of detecting the signal will be higher. Then the next question is, what frequency do you look at? Over the entire radio spectrum, it's just like a rainbow again. Over all those different frequencies that you could search, where should you look?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's countless, right? And, when I discuss the electromagnetic spectrum with students, we talk about the optical is here and the infrared is here. And then there's the radio at the lowest energy, lowest frequency end. And they say, what's beyond that? And I'm like, that's it. That's the end. Radio is at the end. So it's practically an infinite number of frequencies you would have to look at.
Oh my gosh.
Some are practical. Again, higher frequency gets out of an ionosphere, a dense ionosphere. Some are scientific, like there's a very specific radio frequency or wavelength that hydrogen emits at. It's at a wavelength of 21 centimeters. And so this is a known thing, right? Every civilization that has radio technology should know, because hydrogen's the most abundant atom in the universe. So with that element everywhere, you should see this hydrogen emission or absorption everywhere. And it's a very well-known frequency. So some people think using that frequency or some multiple of that frequency. I think Carl Sagan and Contact used that frequency times pi, or something like that, So that's another thought. But, in general, you kind of want to do an all sky, all frequency survey.
So you just see what you're going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's very complicated. And like you said before, civilizations could advance outside of radio frequencies and then they wouldn't be detectable in that manner.
That's right. We wouldn't know. This was an idea when we first had sensitive gamma ray telescopes, like I like to use when they first started doing large scale surveys. We were seeing these bursts of gamma rays. We've called them gamma ray bursts because we don't come up with clever names.
Yeah.
And they seem to be everywhere. The distribution was completely random throughout the sky. It's what we would say. It's isotropic. You see them in all directions evenly. And what the heck are these things? They were explosions, presumably, very energetic. We didn't see them at any other frequencies. They didn't show up in X-rays or optical or anything else, not initially. So there were two options. One is they were cosmological. They were very far away and they were coming from everywhere in the universe, probably galaxies. Another was that they were super close, like maybe even solar system scale, because that's the only other way they would have been isotropic, because the Milky Way itself is not at all isotropic. It's very flat. And so when we look around at the density of stars, we see this thick band of stars, but when you look in and out of the plane, it's pretty empty. So if you see an isotropic distribution, it's either really close or really far away. Turned out to be really far away. We saw afterglows in X-rays and optical and things like that eventually, and they end up being these explosions. We still don't exactly know what's going on with gamma ray bursts, but an early thing was, hey, it's this aliens, right? Always like the first thing, we don't know what these things are, so
aliens.
The aliens, yeah. So recently, there's been another one of these in the radio. There are these fast radio bursts. Again, the name says it all. They're bursts of radio emission, very, very bright, and very, very fast, milliseconds. They're on, they're off, boom. There's enough information in how that burst, how that pulse of radiation reaches us to let us gauge about how far away they are. Again, there's plasma between out in space, and that same plasma, like in our ionosphere, can actually twiddle the frequencies as a light wave goes through it. It's not just a single pulse that reaches us. The pulse gets a little smeared out in frequency so that the lower frequencies will arrive a little bit later. So we see this little smear out, and that tells us how much plasma was between us and them. And so if we measure that there's a big amount of plasma, then these things are far away. If there's not so much plasma, then they must be close. And all of these fast radio bursts seem to be far away, turns out. So, but first time they showed up, people were like, what the heck is this? Again, aliens, right? So it could be aliens, who knows?
Right.
But they were also rare. And now there's like hundreds and hundreds of X-radio bursts. So they seem pretty natural.
Yeah.
But this kind of stuff, gamma ray bursts were like in the 90s. Fast radio bursts are now really fresh news. So who knows what we detect next time? There could be some X-ray burst thing or something that for some reason we didn't see before. And maybe that's aliens. We don't know.
Eventually we will find them. But I guess this leads me to my final question, which is, aliens, most likely, if they were to come here, they would be seemingly infinitely more advanced just because of the distances that they would have to figure out how to travel. Do you think that's the case? Yeah. Okay. So
if they come here at all, right? They could just send emissaries like robots. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We send robots out through the solar system and beyond. They could just do that. They may already have. But then the question is, where are they, right? It's the same thing. There's this sometimes referred to as the Fermi paradox or the great silence. Why don't we hear from them? Why has SETI so far been a failure? We've also not seen any of their probes. We've only just now had 2 interstellar objects discovered. We noticed there were these couple of asteroids or comet type things that came through the solar system, and they definitely came from beyond the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
So we're starting to discover these objects that are coming from beyond the solar system. And of course, the first time one went by, people were like, aliens. Right? Every single time it's like that. And as you followed it, right, there's this anomaly, like it didn't seem to be moving the way you would expect from gravity and stuff. And so of course it has an engine on it, or something like that. People always go with the aliens first. But so that's another great silence, is we're not seeing their probes either. So who knows? But the scary thing in Liu Xixin's books. So there are 3 books in this series. The second one's called The Dark Forest, and they set up this concept of how a galactic civilization, so a bunch of civilizations would work, and effectively, since it's a variation of the prisoner's dilemma. Effectively, you just don't know, because the lengths of communication are so vast. You can't communicate. You can't say, no, you can trust me. Right? There's no time for that. There's no way to communicate that. So everybody is inherently suspicious, and there's a chain of suspicion that you don't know, that I don't know, that you don't know what I'm thinking. And it just goes on and on and on. And so the only thing you can be is suspicious. And so he describes the galaxy as dark forest, and everybody is a hunter. And so you're creeping through the dark forest as quietly as you possibly can, because there's other hunters out there. And anytime you stumble across somebody, it's in your own best interest to take them out. And so even if you're discovered, there's no need to send a fleet of invaders and things like that. You can just send one big fat missile. And for all the different civilizations that could be out there, maybe millions, most of them would not even bother, right? They're like, oh, I see this civilization out there. I'm just going to stay away and make sure they don't know I'm here. But there might be 1 or 2 of those civilizations out of the millions that are like, okay, let me go look, right? And that could be the flying saucers. But there might be 1 or 2 of them that say, I don't even have to look. I'm just going to knock them out. They could be trouble. And this is what goes on in the 3-body problem trilogy. And it's illustrated in a few examples. In one case, there's an Earth fleet that gets destroyed, and there's a couple of ships that are stranded in deep, deep space, and they can't go back to the Earth because they already know the Earth is doomed because of the dark forest we've been discovered. After a very short amount of time, they both realize that their resources are limited, and they kill each other. So, and then the other idea is there's a character that does an experiment where he exposes the location of another star as if it's broadcasting, here I am, just to see what would happen. And after about 20 years of waiting, that star is mysteriously destroyed.
Oh, God.
Proof that the galaxy is the dark forest.
Yeah.
And so now the idea is, oh, we really are stupid and we have to stay quiet. And in fact, there's another system that we end up contacting that wants to destroy. So they're sending the fleet over to us, and it's going to take hundreds of years. They very clumsily expose themselves they get destroyed. And just by our association with them, we end up getting destroyed too. So we were too tentative to hide. We knew the technology, there was a way to hide or to broadcast to the galaxy that we're safe. You don't have to worry about us. A very complicated technological thing.
Yeah.
But we didn't implement it in time. And it all kind of doesn't matter, because if you read to the very end, the whole universe is destroyed. It's really dark.
Yeah. Geez.
Yeah.
Well, my goodness, that is.
Gives me
It checks
anxiety.
out. It checks out, right? Like it seemingly makes sense that.
Really, really logical. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Medi people, on to their credit, they argue that it's not so dire. And one of the biggest things they argue for is that the cat's out of the bag already, right? We've been broadcasting and we're not dead.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we've been broadcasting for a century and we're not dead yet, maybe the universe is cool. And we could be first. We could still be the only one. Your number came out small.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that there is the Starfleet Federation out there that is actually altruistic. But gosh, we just don't know.
Oh man. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you for explaining everything to me. Is there anything you think I'm missing?
No, I don't know. I mean, it's been a fun, rambling conversation. We went in a lot of different avenues that I wasn't anticipating. But yeah, people are really arguing about this now, because Medi is on the verge of probably doing something. And folks want to make sure that doesn't happen without consultation with the rest of the world,
Yeah.
And Xi Jinlu's book is science fiction, and there was some fictional stuff that allowed us to broadcast with enough strength to be a detectable signal. So right now we're still fairly undetectable. It's really hard to see us, but that was the action of one misanthropic person and set the whole ball rolling and ended up in the destruction of our solar system. So it's it took hundreds of years, but one person sent out a message and cooked us all. Could it be that dire? It could.
Yikes. Well, it still is fun to consider, and it's something that most likely people will be thinking out for hundreds of years going forward. Hopefully, if we don't nuclear blast each other.
Even just in the coming decades, we're going to be actively looking and probably discovering some of these atmospheric signatures of life and other planets. And so we'll know in our neighborhood where there could be worlds that could support life.
And we haven't even touched on what that would do for us here, how that would change our ideas around religion and how we relate to each other and our environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we are our only supporters, why are we still fighting with each other over bits of dirt and oil and whatnot? It's in our best interest to get along. And what happens if another civilization comes at us if we're not unified?
Right.
Big trouble.
Well, thank you again for this conversation. Is there anything you want to mention, like a book or social media or anything like that?
No, I mean, if folks are interested in knowing more about Astrocom NYC or what CUNY Astro does, they could go to cunyastro.org and check us out, see some of the faculty and what they do. That's basically it.
Yeah, awesome. Also, stop by the American Museum of Natural History. It's incredible if you haven't been.
Oh yeah, a very, very relevant space show right now, Worlds Beyond Earth. So, and I was the project scientist on that. Super proud of that work. And yeah, they're open for business. Definitely come in. Check it all out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Even now, I'm still debating how I feel about aliens, right? Because it's like, it feels like civilizations would blow themselves up before they got to the point of figuring out interstellar travel. Yeah, that doesn't seem easy to do. Everyone kind of needs to be pulling their weight. The scientists here have a lot to deal with people just ignoring science or denying it. So that leads me to believe that aliens might be nice. Though I guess you don't need to be able to travel interstellar distances to send missiles to blow you up. So, I don't know. We'll see. Have a great Thursday. Well, thank you so much to the doctor. It was a lot of fun talking about such a fun subject. The weird thing that gives me anxiety, I'm going to reveal in a second. I just wanted to remind you of my other podcast called Death Space Filling the Void. If you're liking the show, you can make a donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description wherever you're listening. There's also the Instacart link. You can sign up for Instacart to get groceries delivered. I believe your first one is free. And by signing up for it through the link in the description, it tells them that this show sent you, and that also helps support the show. Also, My Software Tutor is offering the promo code POD20, mysoftwaretutor.com. And the Cardist Studio has the promo code AnxietyPod for 10% off your order. So yeah, definitely support those companies that are helping to support the show. Now, the weird thing that caused me anxiety this week is, we're moving in this house where we're getting used to things. It's a much bigger lawn, and so I bought a different sprinkler. And what has been causing me anxiety is like where I position the sprinkler while watering the lawn. Like, is there a stretch that I'm routinely missing? There's just gonna be one brown spot, as if water doesn't just like spread out when it's sprayed. It doesn't just like have hard lines. But I've been improving. I drew a diagram. I can't believe I'm admitting to that. And tried to and calculated the radius of the sprinkler and tried to figure out the best locations to put it. Because it takes, only have one sprinkler, it takes like 4 or 5 hours to get the whole layout. I mean, there's just a lot of grass and it's in a weird shape, an unusual shape. But you rest assured, I'm on it. I'm all over it. So yeah, just like a football coach drawing up a plan. I'm drawing up locations for where I could put my sprinkler. And because that was causing me a lot of anxiety, which is just unnecessary. So unnecessary. As if there isn't a lot more things to be worried about right now. Well, I don't know why I said that so weird. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. Hope your anxiety levels are nice and low. You're doing good. You're having a good summer. Taking care of yourself. And I'll talk to you on Thursday.